Hello there, I'm Enrique and I'm your reviewer. And today I'm taking a look of what is my first impressions to the new Disney Plus TV series, which is based on one of the most important characters in Star Wars history. Now, before I begin, let me clarify something for a lot of people. While I am a fan of Star Wars and listen to movies and TV shows, I don't think I consider myself like a hardcore fan to say if I read the comics, the novels, or everything that I embrace in my life that is Star Wars. But I will say this. If there are two characters that I love the most in Star Wars history, that will be Din Djarin's The Mandalorian, and of course, Obi-Wan Kenobi. The history of Obi-Wan Kenobi is very long and extended for a long time. So I'm going to talk about what I consider is the origin and the timeline in between the prequels to the sequels, or at least the original series in this case. So I'm going to try to sum it up as best as I can. So, what is Obi-Wan Kenobi? Well, in the original trilogy, we see that Obi-Wan Kenobi, or Ben Kenobi as we'll call it, he was an old wise man who was a Jedi from a long forgotten era of Jedis. He was wise, calm, subdued, but also very strong and very firm. He faced Darth Vader in the first movie in The New Hope, and then he died, which in many respects, he will say it started like the whole mentor dies for the sake of the hero going through a journey. But nonetheless, we don't know exactly who Obi-Wan Kenobi was or how was his time as a Jedi was, and his connection with Darth Vader. It wasn't until, of course, we saw the prequels. Now, whether you love or hate the prequels, it doesn't matter. Or it matters for a lot of fans. But I'll say this from my experience. If there was one character that I loved from the prequels, no matter what, it was Obi-Wan, of course. We saw him through a Padawan, to a Jedi Knight, to a Master, to the man who lost everything. And in my opinion, is one of the things that I love about Obi-Wan Kenobi. How he endures so much loss after everything that he has gone through. In the prequels, starting with the Phantom Menace, we saw him lose his master Qui-Gon. Then in the sequels, when we saw him in Attack of the Clones, he was trying to get in on his own, trying to investigate the plot about the clones. Then in the Clone Wars saga, or at least in the TV series, we saw him through a lot of tribulation and a lot of rivalries, like the ones we had with Grievous, but more importantly, like the ones that he had with Darth Maul, who, yes, he came back for this. And he was out for vengeance. And Obi-Wan was very, very scared, but also very, very worried about what he can do. And of course, in the Clone Wars series, we saw that Obi-Wan had a lover called Satine, whom Darth Maul also killed. So yeah, this is pretty a big deal for him. And it was part of the things that made him be the man who we're going to see in this show. But nonetheless, in Revenge of the Sith, we saw him through the journey that led him to be in Tatooine. How he lost Anakin to the dark side. How he had to defeat him and cut his extremities in order to stop him. How he had to take care of Luke. How he had to deal with the fact that he had no longer the Jedis on his side. Or that he was no longer a welcome guy. So yeah, this prequel, this third movie was a big deal for a lot of people. It was the final installment in what I consider to be the Skywalker saga, or as they call it. But nonetheless, the idea of Obi-Wan Kenobi having his own TV series is nothing new for everybody. But I always figured that it was going to be taking place like in the prequel era, like, you know, in between Star Wars, Clone Wars, and it was going to be just animated, or at least in a way that they can make Obi-Wan having an origin story, like those kind of things. But no. If anything, this series takes place in between the prequels to the original series. And we will see what happens to Obi-Wan in the near future. Now, with that out of the way, let's talk about the plot. In the first two episodes, we see that Obi-Wan Kenobi is pretty much acting like a hermit, having a normal job, living in a cave, and be completely excluded from any person, except for the fact that he's taking care of Luke Skywalker, who's still 10 years old in this episode. So we see him that he's taking care of him as well as maintain that undercover area, and pretty much losing hope after Revenge of the Sith. After all, what happens when you face your own young apprentice, cut his limbs, and then figure out that you're no longer the same Jedi that you used to be? That's pretty much a heavy toll on Obi-Wan. But matters are getting worse, as the Inquisitors are looking for him and the rest of the Jedi. And one of them, which is Reva, is probably more ambitious in finding Obi-Wan Kenobi specifically. So he captures a young Leia and takes her to another planet in hopes to, take Obi-Wan Kenobi out of his hideout. And this forces Obi-Wan to do what he has to do, as Bail Organa pleads with him in order to get Leia back. So Obi-Wan has no choice but to embark into his journey to find and rescue Leia. But little does he know that not only the Inquisitors are looking for him, but someone else. The past is hunting for him, and this guy is angry, and this guy is hunting. For the casting characters, since this is still my first impression, I'm only going to focus in two characters, the principal ones that are probably going to be from the beginning to the end. So, let's start with Reva Sevanter, also known as the third sister, played by Moses Ingram. Now, Reva, well, a lot of people don't know how she became an Inquisitor, but spoilers if you haven't seen the show. She's probably one of the younglings who was in the Jedi Temple when Order 66 happened. And it's not just a prediction, it's a spoiler, because I saw it in the first scene of the episode. So, yeah, she's pretty much one of the younglings who was turned by the Inquisitors and become one herself. Now, what is Reva's goal in this series? Well, it's very simple. She wants to find Obi-Wan Kenobi. A lot of the Inquisitors that we see in this show are only fixated into finding any kind of Jedi. But Reva is different. She wants to find only Obi-Wan Kenobi. And she's willing to go through anybody, including his own Inquisitor leaders, to do so. She's more ruthless and pretty much unpredictable because her goal is mainly to find Obi-Wan Kenobi, but not to kill him directly. After all, she doesn't have a grudge against Kenobi. But she does have a grudge against his kind of Jedi. And a lot of people think that this is probably going to be something that changes Obi-Wan as well for the better. But nonetheless, Reva is pretty much ruthless, and even as ruthless as a certain one that I'm going to mention later on. But yeah. She's determined to find Obi-Wan Kenobi, even to the point of kidnapping children. So she's no joke, in fact. I believe that she's as dangerous as his fellow Inquisitors. And I have to admit, she intimidates the hell out of me every time she speaks or even every time she yells, because by God, she's unforgiving. Now let's talk about the main character of this show, Obi-Wan Kenobi, played once again by Ewan McGregor. Now, I will admit, putting Obi-Wan series in between the sequels and the prequels is something that a lot of people have been against for many reasons. For one, do we really need to see what happens in between the series? And while Rebels did so in a different way, this is talking about taking a beloved character and putting him in the middle of a story that we already know how it's going to end. So to put him in the middle is pretty much a risky thing to do, especially considering how much beloved this character is. And Obi-Wan is very beloved by many, myself included. So yeah, there's a very big deal of, let's say, doubts and trepidations considering who we're talking about. But nonetheless, what do we see in this series? Well, Obi-Wan is pretty much the guy that we see in this show. A beat up Jedi who felt like life is taking a toll into him. He feels very defeated and having a lot of PTSD considering what happened between him and Anakin. And he starts to losing hope. So now that Leia has been captured by Reva and the bounty hunters, he has no choice but to go and rescue her. And even though he's against the idea, now he has to deal with the fact that he now has to become a different kind of person that he used to be before, or even the kind of guy that he is now. So even though this situation was not chosen by his own terms, he has no choice but to do so, because Jedi cannot quiet the voices of help, and the crying for help now is louder now that he has to rescue this young little kid. I'll say this about Ewan McGregor that I haven't said about before. If there's a guy who can play Obi-Wan Kenobi and live up to what Alec Guinness did in the original series, then that would be Ewan McGregor. I mean, let's just face it, he's the best actor. He mimics the character perfectly from the original, but adding something new. Now, we have seen a lot of people taking Obi-Wan to different directions. James Arnold Taylor, who was the voice of Obi-Wan in the Clone Wars, is one of them. However, I feel like Obi-Wan Kenobi added not only that level of humanity and relatability to the character, but also more depth in this case. Because now that we see him going through a lot of changes in his life, now he has to change once again for the better of other people. And he has to realize now that the faith that he has in the Jedi that he lost, he has to find it again and find his way back to be a Jedi once again. And in my opinion, Ewan McGregor is actually the better man to do the job. And I'm happy that he's back. No matter what or how the show turns out, if Ewan McGregor is playing the character, I'll be happy. And I hope he can get to show his Jedi skills and abilities to the entire world. Now, the production design and the effects of this TV show are really high up. It's fair to say that it is in the same quality as The Mandalorian, as we see not only the great designs and effects on the creatures and the towns of Tatooine and Daiyu, but also the effects on everything else. Especially considering that there is a lot of good practical effects in this series, so I'm happy that they use that. And I'm happy to report that everything from the makeup to the suits, it looks fantastic. You have no doubt that you're in the Star Wars world. Now, I cannot give away too much about this series since it's still in its first 2 episodes as I'm recording. However, I can say this. I'm hoping that this series for the next 6 episodes, or at least for the next 4 episodes that it remains, that not only could live up to the original movies, but also that it live up to the legend that is Obi-Wan Kenobi. Whether you like the idea of this guy getting his own TV series or maybe doing it a different way, that's fair enough. But what I'm hoping to see here is what Obi-Wan I always believed to be, like one of those Jedi's that despite suffering too much, he at least manages to find hope in the strangest of places. So I hope this series lives and honors this character a lot. And even though I cannot get my immediate thoughts until the series ends, but now the question remains in between what happens throughout this series. What is the goal of Reva capturing Obi-Wan? What is Obi-Wan going to do after confronting his past? How is he going to save Leia? what other dangers he has to face, and what will be the ultimate battle that he will face at the end of the series. All the questions we'll find out sooner than later in the next few days and weeks. So I cannot give you so much, but I'll say this, that I'm hopeful and to be continued.